New Year, Simon, first of all. I don't think we've exchanged those Happy New Year greetings yet, but
Happy New Year to you too, Phil.
yeah, thank you, Simon. And it's fantastic that we've managed to find some time in your busy diary to join us on the Sales Transformation Podcast Master Series. In fact, this is the first one we're doing this year, so it's kind of special. It's the kickoff to the year, Simon. So
what a great start to the new year. That's what you're thinking, yes?
Great. It's a really great start. So just before perhaps we can go into it, if I can give the listeners a little bit of a background, is that that Simon has been through, our master's program, and through that experience, it's been really interesting to see how Simon has applied himself to the challenge of sales leadership and sales management, and in particular to the way in which he's been now managing a team of young sales apprenticeships. And so what I hope we can cover on this particular masterclass is to get some insights from Simon about the journey that he's been on whilst at Royal Mail, and we'll ask Simon to say a few words about his current role. And then to talk about his kind of learning experiences and how he sees his future developing as well. So, Simon, wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Philip.
So, Simon, I wonder if we could start with you just giving a sort of a potted history about who you are and how you've got to be where you are at Royal Mail.
Okay. I joined Royal Mail back when I was 16, straight out of school. Straight into Royal Mail. I've been now with Royal Mail nearly 40 years. 40 years in September.
That's incredible. It's a long time, isn't it?
It's quite a while, yes. It's quite a while to be in one place. It's really quite interesting, the fact that because I've been in a place for so long, you would think you'd become really, really institutionalized, and I did. I reached a point where I'd gone through some roles within operations, starting off delivering as a postman, and worked my way through and took myself into a sales part of the business. So I went into commercial around about 20 years ago, and probably I've worked within commercial now for 20 years, but I've worked within account management, I've worked within new business. So it always felt like I was going through changes and doing different things. Yeah. We'll talk through
that.
It really does feel like shortly. So yeah, I've kind of been around a while, seen a lot of things, and plenty of experience under the belt.
So I did just a question about how many people actually sort of move from being a postie sort of into the commercial or operational side of the post office or Royal Mail?
That would be hard for me to guess, but I would say less than a handful of people will have made that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. So so another question for you. At what point and what made you kind of consider switching from operations into sales? What triggered that role into the more sort of commercial aspect of the business?
I think the trigger was basically, it's going to sound bad, but I was going through a divorce.
Yeah.
In these moments, you kind of think, my life's got to be different.
Yeah.
And I was going to become a single parent, so I was going to be looking after my two children. I thought, working shifts is not going to be what I need. I need a change.
Yeah.
And I was quite fortunate at the time that they were building a sales force within Royal Mail. Because as you probably recognise, we were a service before, and everything was kind of transactional. And then once we went into this place where we were moving towards being into a public zone, we needed a sales force to start competing against all the competitors, basically.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I seized the opportunity to transfer across, which wasn't easy because what I had to do at the time was work weekends and then take up a secondary job in sales Monday to Friday in order to give me some experience to help me with that transition. So, it was a life-changing moment. I suppose you can call within my own personal life, which drove
Yeah,
the change in my work life.
yeah. No, I didn't realise that, Simon. So that's an amazing journey that you've kind of been on. So maybe you could bring us up to speed with what your role is today. So I know that you know that Royal Mail have gone through so many changes, and we had John Nicholson actually talking about some of these at the recent GST event that we had at the Stock Exchange. But perhaps you could just talk through the kind of role that you've currently got at Royal Mail.
Yeah, so I look after a sales centre, a new business team,
Okay.
23 individuals within my team. And that team looks after basically small accounts. So what we would term small accounts. So anything less than £1 million worth of spend is what we would term as a small
Okay.
account in our kind of structure, because it's huge, the kind of customer
Yeah.
base we have. So we look after a lot of companies, and we help a lot of companies to grow.
Okay.
That's basically what we're there to do, to try and help people, support people as best we can.
Right. So you've got 20, did you say 23 people in your,
23, yeah,
you got
currently.
23 people in your team. And basically these are people who are based inside. They're not on the road. Is that right? They're in a kind of center where they're
Yes,
supporting those small to medium sized businesses, but actually, you know, quite some of them are going to be quite large if they're spending a million with you. Or,
yes, they're like, so again, it's a question of scale. So
yeah,
we are desk based, and that provides a great platform actually for the things that we went through
yeah,
being desk based, because we were an organisation where we were having an aging sales force.
yeah,
And when you're looking to sort of bring new people in, you've got to think, right, what's our structure going to be? Because we're kind of bringing in similar ages. We would like to try and kind of future proof ourselves. So
yeah,
this was one of our sales director's visions, that right, this is where we're at, and here's where we'd like to be. And I guess one of the things as well that were in consideration was we kind of recirculate quite a lot of the same faces sometimes. You know,
yeah,
in industries, you get people who have got X amount of experience. So you when you are advertising roles, you want to bring in people with X amount of experience,
yeah.
but not necessarily is that what you want, because their experiences might not be what you would like. So we went through this little bit of a massive change actually in how we brought in people.
Yes. Yeah, that's amazing. And we were, you know, I think we were in a way part of those discussions when we were working with Royal Mail and the Trailblazer group that set up the sort of sales apprenticeships as a means of attracting some of these younger people
Mhm.
into enterprises, working alongside Graham Davis at the time. You know, he was the chair of that group, and of course Andre in the background. But I think that quite a number of these young sales apprentices have ended up in your team. Is that right? Or I think a reasonable number have ended
A
up.
reasonable number, yeah. So I've had 11 apprentices come through in
11.
the course of the three cohorts, which is quite a number.
Yeah,
That quite a percentage within the Royal Mail are coming through this
yeah,
office. Um, we've had those across three cohorts,
yeah,
across a number of years,
yeah,
and it's been really, really interesting to see the changes that have happened through this.
yeah,
So I've got to be honest with you, when it was first muted and we were first bringing in the first set of apprentices, I kind of had people in that first sort of week or so within the room, because I've got a room basically at this point where most people have got somewhere roundabout in their teens worth of experience working within Royal Mail sales.
yeah,
So, 16 years onwards. And suddenly we were getting these people in that have got no sales experience, only just left school. And we're like, what are we doing with these children coming into work? That,
yeah,
that,
yeah,
that how can they know sales? And that was quite interesting. That was the start point, if you will. So you've got these you get these apprentices coming in really excited to have an opportunity to do
Yeah.
something, being the very first ones to do sales degrees. So they were super
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah.
And it was a really good mixture. Interesting to see at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from both sides, it's not just those that have been established in the business. I guess perhaps rather cynically, perhaps cynical may not be quite the right word, but sort of, yeah, exactly like you say. What can these school kids do? I've been around for sort of 16, 17 years plus.
Yeah.
But it's also going to be a bit of a challenge for them because they're they're coming into an environment where their social connections are going to be with schoolmates of you know uh, 17, 18 years old, and they're sitting in a room now with people what in their mid 30s plus, and they must have wondered what on earth are they doing. Sort of.
Yeah, well, not just them, myself too included. Suddenly, I had this
Yeah.
group of people. Now, fortunately, I've got two young boys. Well, they were young, not
Okay.
young anymore. At the time, they'll have been about 20. So I had
Okay.
experience with younger people, as in personal life, but
Yeah.
I'd never thought about the complications with it in work life.
Okay.
And they think different.
Okay.
Well, I didn't recognize it at the time, but I had become very entrenched in the way that I thought, the way that I did things, and the way
Yeah.
that I saw things. And I've got to, not shamefully, but I hold my hand up and say, I was kind of thinking, I'm really not sure what I'm going to do with these people. I have no idea how I'm going to give them the experience they need. So I thought it was going to be me giving.
Okay. Well, could you talk me through then, some of the, what your journey's been like and what your reflections have been as a consequence, but, both for the apprentices coming into the business, but also those that have been sort of well established, how was that journey for you? What did you learn? Or what have you learned about it?
So I guess there's a plethora of things that I've learned. Right at the very, very beginning, this was about how do I blend an office where half of them think that they shouldn't be here, half of them think I don't know how to be here. How do I blend that? So there was a real
Yeah.
challenge there on creating that kind of office, and I had no idea how to do that. Ideas were out completely. But what actually happened was it was uh, quite unexpected, I think is probably the word for me. What started to happen was within the first couple of weeks, people started to build some relationships, and you get those ones that are quite chatty, and they start to connect. And we
Yeah.
were doing the basics of helping people trading, so learn products and stuff like that, and how to do certain things with software and what have you. So people started to connect. Then what really started to happen was the apprentices were listening, and at that point, the people in the room suddenly started to feel, I can only describe, getting more engaged with working with them because they were like, yeah, I'm helpful here, I'm helping you. And they were getting something back from that.
Yeah.
I recognise what that is now, but I didn't at the time. I was like, well, this is going quite well. They're blending together. This is nice.
Yeah.
But then what started to happen as the apprentices began to go and learn, they were starting to question some of the ways that we did things, the way that we saw things, and the way that we spoke to customers. And indeed, the way that we did some research on trying to find a customer base. Then actually it started to go back, the information travel started to go back in the other direction,
Okay.
which was surprising for all.
Yeah.
Really interesting to see. And suddenly it was like this joint respect started to happen within the room. And age seemed to stop being a difference for, I won't say for everyone straight away, but it was bleeding through the room, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
as everybody started to add a bit more value into what they were doing. It was really a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. And whilst this was going on, am I right in saying that this is when you were doing your master's program as well?
No, so what happened was I was, as part of the apprenticeship program, you joined these tripartite meetings.
Tripartite meetings, yeah.
And I was spending a lot of time with the apprentices, talking to them through what is it you're doing, how are you doing that, and trying to help them with how they might present that and their thought processes. Just basically, I didn't have any answers for them. I was like, well, I'm just really interested in what you're doing. So that's how it started for me. I was just like, I'm really interested in this. Let me help me understand what it is you're doing. Because I don't want to go to these tripart meetings and not have a clue. And that was my real reason for starting to get involved with it. I just didn't want to embarrass myself in front of somebody else thinking, you don't know what you're talking about. But actually, so what happened though for me was suddenly, because I'm not academic, Philip, whatsoever. As you can tell, you leave school at 16. You're really not focused on opening your mind and really expanding it. And a lot of time has travelled. I was 50 when this started to happen, and a lot of time had passed under the water. And I was like, learning's not for me. But actually, what started to happen when I was talking to them, I realised that advanced learning is not a right and wrong choice.
Yeah.
Advanced learning is about you thinking about a situation, an issue, or something that's relevant to you in what you're doing, and then you thinking that you consider the possible different views on it, and you're comparing and contrasting different views upon something that's known and coming out with your own. And I was like, wow, I've never done something like that. This is really, really interesting. And it absolutely started to create something in my brain that there's never been there. I was like, I'm enjoying this.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, it's so interesting hearing you talk about that, and so just to summarise, what I think you've just been kind of sharing is that you decided to embark yourself on the master's program because you had these young apprentices who are on the undergraduate program, and that your initial trigger was one of wanting to be ahead of the curve to some extent, or at least experience what they're going through, so you could connect and relate to them, but as well as perhaps develop some leadership skills, in that process. But then what you've and it's so interesting is because I sometimes think that it's a disadvantage to do the master's program if you have already done an undergraduate or another type of postgraduate degree, because you come into it with no bias at all, because you don't quite know what to expect. Yeah, you're not trying to go back to how you used to write academic papers when you were doing the undergraduate degree. And so we quite often find that people come into the program initially very worried about doing the masters, not having been, should I be here? Do I have a right to be on this master's program even? But yet realizing you've got this wealth of knowledge and experience and this opportunity to critically reflect, which is one of the core skills of the master's program, and what you're doing, and getting energy from the new ideas that you've developed.
Beautifully summarised there. Yes, that is basically what was happening to me. And again, I wasn't in a place where I could recognise that at that point.
Yeah,
I just knew that. Actually, I feel. I guess the only way I can describe it is I feel alive again.
Yeah,
I feel invigorated. And so I took a plunge, and like you say, I went into to do the masters in senior sales leadership. And right up until the point of that first meeting that we had, where all the cohort met together down in Middlesex, I was absolutely saying to myself, "What am I doing?"
Yeah,
as you rightly said. Then I do not belong in a university.
Yeah.
I left school at 16 with nothing.
With nothing, yeah.
And I'm kidding myself. And there's all that self-doubt that comes in. But what I'd seen was actually this is not about passing a test. This is just about this. And I kept having to reinforce that with myself to keep myself pushing through at the early stages. And it's really great that when you go into it, you meet other people from other industries.
Yeah.
And actually what you're getting then is a real different view on absolutely everything.
Yeah.
If you think about where I've been either in a school, institutionalized, or in Royal Mail, institutionalized. I have not very little experience of the outside world, and that was a massive plus for me on the master's course. That blending, that ability to talk to people and exchange ideas from probably huge different viewpoints.
Yeah.
Which again, it just opens up your brain.
Yeah.
There's an interesting thing that I found out during all the research and the stuff that I did. When by the time you reach the age of 35, 95% of thought is already pre-programmed. Free thinking is 5% of what you do.
Yeah.
So if I can just draw the picture of that, you kind of, as you go through life's experiences, if I touch something that's hot, my brain says, don't touch hot things because that's not good for you. So you wouldn't, as you reach out towards something hot, your brain goes, no, that's going to be hot, it's going to hurt you, move away. You think, right, okay, well, do that. 95% of stuff of what you do and you think about is done and dusted before you even go anywhere near it.
Yeah.
Your brain's boom. And I was thinking, actually, I'd like to think different, be different. And it wasn't until I started doing the Masters that I realised that although I'd been in sales for 20 years, I had gone rigid into this almost rut-like process that said, this works, I'm not changing this. It doesn't matter that the world is changing, the environment's changing, the way that customers interact is changing. This is what we do, this is how we're doing it, it's tried, it's trusted. This got me starting to think differently, be different. And I guess the word I'm looking for is become more agile in what was happening and then how I would deal with that. But most importantly for me, because I'm a team, at the time I was a manager, I was managing people and I needed them to change.
Yeah.
So what happened as I went into the Masters, I recognised, I did this section, a module on it, and it changed everything for me, emotional intelligence.
Yes, yeah.
People talk an awful lot about emotional intelligence as though they understand it.
Yeah.
I would wager 90% of people know the titles, but have not probably gone into the depths of that reflection upon themselves, about trying to understand and slow that auto process, those 95% of thoughts that just come in and you just do, stop them and think, is that the way to do it? Is that what I should do? And that to me was a moment. And what I did, Phil, was I said, right, I'm going to do things differently. And we were going through some big changes within our organisation. So I said, right, I've got to set a vision for my team. And I want to keep my vision simple. And I stole something unashamedly from a guy called Chad Mentan, who said, and he really exposed emotional intelligence for me. I watched a video of his where he was talking on TED Talks to Google, the team at Google. And it was basically, he said, I have one focus, that all I want to do. And the only thing I want to do is be at peace. And that makes people happy and makes me happy. And I'm like, whoa, that's interesting. How does one become at peace? And that's where I really started to look at things. So I set the vision for the team to say, right, we need to be agile, we need to change, and here's what we're going to do. I want us to create a place of happiness. This room will be happy, and here's how we're going to do it. And it was a bit tell to start off with, because I wanted to change things. And what I said was, you are going to see a different me, and I need you to challenge me if I behave in these ways.
Yeah.
And I set out the behaviour that I didn't want to see in myself anymore, which was really massive for me, because that changed me.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I think emotional intelligence is such a great topic, and of course, you've got, the founder of that sort of Goldman, we owe a lot to him for putting EQ actually on the map. And just out of interest, and thinking about our podcast on the Today program on Radio 4, I was listening to them talking about his work. And he's done a recent study. I tried to look it up actually just before the podcast, which was that he looks at data on a national level, and I think and he's been tracking IQ and EQ. In his view, EQ is more important than IQ. And with the analysis of particular things like Twitter feeds and social media, there's a sort of vitriol that you actually see in quite a lot of the communications. And he feels that we are losing EQ. The trend is negatively downwards on EQ, whereas IQ seems to be going up a bit. But from his analysis, I'd like to get the source of that more established. But it was talked about on the Today program. I think it was even yesterday. Something really recent. And,
Yeah, it's really interesting because if you think about the way we are at the moment in society, we're very focused at the moment on how people feel and being receptive to those feelings. Emotional intelligence, it needs to be right up there, and it's got to be right up there in the way that we manage people these days. But also, most importantly, I feel people manage themselves.
Right.
And I think if I'm gonna be judgmental just for a moment, I feel that in society at the moment we're excusing that a little bit.
Yeah.
That you take responsibility for you. And that's where emotional intelligence begins for me anyway. It's about you owning you and you understanding you and how you affect those around.
Yeah. So, you're talking about some fairly heady subjects, and I can picture now your team of, you've got your team.
Yeah.
You can see the youngsters probably lapping it up, but I'm just wondering about how the others are now seeing both the young apprentices coming into the business and learning. They're seeing you doing the masters and coming up with these different ideas and frameworks, thinking, oh my goodness, where's Simon taking us now? But could you talk through about, I know we've talked about it before, the sort of ripple effect that you've seen being created with some of the initiatives you've taken in your team?
Yeah, so I guess the ripple effect, as I describe it, is basically people are seeing other people do these things and they're talking about what they learn and what they're thinking differently. And that's encouraged other ones to start. So the culture within the business as well and within my organization was all about looking to continue and improve. How can we help people to develop and put some programs in place where they can do some self-development? So the opportunity was beginning to be created by the business. So we had apprenticeship schemes, we had leadership schemes, and all these variable programs that people could do. And within my room, I got sort of people who've been in there 15, 20 years suddenly wanting to apply for all these different courses. So some people who've been there and gone, I'm quite happy doing what I'm doing, suddenly went, actually, I'm no longer feeling that fulfilled. I want to push myself. And they enrolled upon these programs. And that then creates that, again, it's that ripple effect that goes where other people go, well, if they're doing that, what could I do?
Yeah.
And people started to look at what they could do. And we were starting to look at, why don't we share simple things like bringing books and share books that we found quite inspirational?
Yeah.
And so there was a little library developing in the room where people were going, well, I've read that and it's really good.
Yeah.
And I found that interesting. And then people were talking about how that was starting to affect them in the way that they behave within their home life. Because again, that ripple effect is whatever you're doing, whatever you're learning, is going to change your whole brain structure, the way that it works. Hopefully, or it did for me, and it has for others that I've seen. The way that they take on life has changed. The way that they react has changed.
It's amazing to see, and I mean we talk a lot about transformation, and the heart of transformation is when you start to address, one's core sort of values and belief systems. And it sounds very much the story that you've been sharing is that you've gone through this journey yourself at a very personal level, and that sort of helped create change and transformation with other people as well, because they've begun to question themselves. you know do I,
Yeah.
what do I need to do to be more fulfilled in my work and so on, which is incredible. Can I ask you some questions about performance? Because, we're in a fairly pressurized commercial world. We've been talking about apprenticeships and development and training and emotional intelligence. But what impact have you seen on the performance of your team? Um, as a, in terms of kind of objectives that you've been set and realizing them. Perhaps you could talk a little bit about what you've observed from that point of view.
Yeah, so it's always an ever-changing world, and in sales, where I work, it's high pressured,
Yeah,
and high expectations, and it's relentless.
yeah,
It's a clock that just keeps turning. We go from quarter to quarter on targets, and it
yeah,
just keeps the pressure never relents.
yeah,
And I think what we've been learning to do over the last couple of years, which we've focused on massively in the room, is this thing that people now call well-being, but it's about trying to stay in a place where you feel you're in control of what you're doing so you can achieve what you can do. So I can only talk hypothetically on what I think would have happened
yeah.
had we have not embarked upon this whole thing.
Okay.
For the first moment, if I can, hypothetically, I believe that we would not have coped. I would have been a different person. I would probably have been very unhelpful, and very unempathetic with people. And probably
Yeah,
people would have been, I believe, in a place where they would have hit the stress levels, and we would have been into lots of sick zones and probably lots of people going off. And that's more in my opinion upon hypothetically where we
yeah,
might have been. Because what I've seen is people, as they're going through this process, as we've been asked to do more, the dial is always being turned up. We're asking each other and supporting each other in a collaborative kind of way of going, right, this is what it is.
yeah,
What is it we're going to do? And we've done that as a group, collectively, and we've done that as individuals in coaching sessions, which has been the difference for me, that we've managed to keep pace.
okay,
So we've been hitting targets when it's not possible to, well, not probable.
okay.
It's been tough times. We've been in industrial action,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
and we've still managed to draw through and get those targets hit. And it's that resilience
yeah, yeah,
that we've created, and it's really hard to pinpoint certain things. The fact that we're maintaining great pace, and people are still getting better. That efficiency and effectiveness that we do. So we're a little bit more efficient in what we do. The ideas we pull in there to try and change things and behaviours within the room is
yeah,
getting slicker. And that belief that actually I don't want to live the same day every day. Every day is different,
yeah, yeah.
and people are approaching that way. So we're hitting numbers, and people are in a good place. What more
Fantastic.
can you ask for from a team? I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting that it's been very public, the challenges that Royal Mail have been facing. With both the pandemic and then, of course, the strike action, and then the cyber attack that affected the organisation. And it's a bit like imagining someone in a boxing rink. I think you're sort of getting these blows. I think possibly more so than other organisations, because you've had these the cyber attack was very specific to Royal Mail Group, and it was very public, and the strike action was very visible. Not every organisation has had to deal with these kind of very strong prevailing winds, but it's been extraordinary how the organisation has sort of coped with that, and it's really interesting to hear. When it comes down to where the rubber hits the road, which is where your team is. Your team is the rubber that hits the road with customer conversations. How in spite of all that, you've managed to, like you say, hit ever increasing targets and still be in a good place. I mean, I think that's a fantastic accolade. Can I come back to the young apprentices that have joined you? You've had 11 come into your team, and I guess some of these have moved on inside the organization. Is there a journey you've seen now? How are they doing now? How are they doing in the company or outside the company?
So it makes me smile when I talk about this, because this is all about where people want to take themselves. So
Yeah,
these youngsters came in to do an apprenticeship, not really sure what would happen at the outcome of it. And
yeah,
we've had 3 cohorts, as you say, so 11 people going through.
yeah.
And of those 11, 9 of them have either got into promotion,
Okay.
either inside our business or outside our business into a different role. So not always do you get the outcome
Yeah,
that people who are starting to find and really understand themselves and realize the potential they have or what they would like to do.
yeah,
As that opens up, as they're learning and doing, they might end up going to a different company. And that's something that, we kind of anticipated, but we didn't think would happen so much, but it did. It happened to some. But others are now providing greater benefits to this business. They're adding more value because they've gone into different levels of roles and providing a different viewpoint in the way that they do things. One
yeah.
of them's working actually came into sales to do a sales apprenticeship. He's now doing project management. That's where he's found himself. His brain just worked that way, and it's adding massive value to our business in
Yeah.
doing. And I could talk about other ones as well. It just makes me smile.
Yeah.
That all of them are now either promoted or in development roles
Okay.
where they're on their way to it. So the value that they're now beginning to add to our company, to our organisation, we'll starting to see that arrive, I believe. I mean, we saw that as they change the dynamic within my room, but now it's spreading across the business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I talking to various customers of ours who've taken on these youngsters out of school and put them through the degree apprenticeship. There's always an interesting question, which is, now, how long does it take for these youngsters to start to perform in terms of customer conversations at a level that is either close to or equal to some of the others that have been in the business for longer periods of time? How long has it taken them to sort of ramp up? I guess that's the question. And
interesting question. So they probably, I've got to give a generic kind of an answer because everybody's different.
Yeah.
In what the speed that they're able to operate. That probably somewhere in that region of the first year to 2 years is when we started to see the benefits into what they were doing within the organisation. So that first year is all about really learning,
Yeah.
but then putting in and getting to grips with their role and actually starting to do it slightly different.
Okay.
And ask the questions slightly different.
Right.
That started to really happen. So at first, when they come in, they go, "Well, in order to do this job, I'm going to do what you do."
Yeah.
But then, as they learn and they get into their apprenticeship program, they're suddenly going, "Actually, you say that you do that, but the laws of reciprocation say that if I do this, he will do that."
Yeah.
People are going, "Oh, okay." And the way that you're prioritizing your workload, how do you do that? I use this 4-box matrix. What do you do? What do you mean a 4-box matrix? I just look at who's screaming the most. And it was that suddenly that exchange started to happen during that first sort of 1 to 2 years at different levels with different people, depending upon their confidence and their acceleration of learning, because we all learn at different speeds.
Yeah.
But then that was when all things started to happen and move. And as we got to that end of the second year, we were brought in the second cohort then.
Yeah.
And then it really began to accelerate up.
Yeah.
Because suddenly, those ones who were on the first apprenticeship were like, "Yeah, I've been here, I've done this, I've learned this. This is the way we're going to do things." And I stepped back and helped and let them sort of develop a training program. What is it you would want differently? What is it you would do? And for the very first time, I was starting to, instead of thinking I had all the answers, I was listening to other people with great ideas, great brains.
Yeah. Fantastic.
And that changed dynamics hugely.
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic story. So Simon, let's move on to you now, because sort of where is your, you talk about emotional intelligence, but I know that there are other things that are sort of bubbling through, because you're not someone that sits down and stops. I get the sense
No.
you're on this great transformation journey. So can you sort of talk me through where you're at now in terms of your personal development and where you see your future is sort of developing?
Yeah, my future, it's as a almost 56-year-old, you think, yeah, you should be easing up now, going towards whatever you want to do and just relaxing. Quite the contrary. Quite the contrary, Phil. At the moment, I have never felt so invigorated in my life. Couple of things. My brain is now stimulated, and I've always been into physical stuff. So I
Okay.
love activity, love exercise. And fortunately for me, when COVID struck, I was in that module around that emotional intelligence. And I'm like, ooh, now then, this might help me here and help me to understand me. And it helped me to start thinking about what I could and could do, because I couldn't go
Yeah.
into a gym. And that was like, for me, that keeps me centered. If I don't go in a gym and exercise, I'll explode. I won't be able to cope. My brain was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And it suddenly just helped me to deal with that process. And I started
Yeah.
to think about it differently. Like, what can you do different? And so I started to think about, well, I can't do resistance training, which is what I like to do, but I can run, which I don't like, and I can stretch, which I've never done.
Okay.
And actually what it started to do is get me to start to think, instead of like emotional intelligence where you're thinking about your brain, it got me thinking about my body and
Okay.
what it does and why it does. And why do I want to do that? And what is it I'm ultimately after? What's the purpose of what I'm doing? And it got me going really deep into my thoughts. And so I started to develop my own methodology around exercise.
Okay.
And it was all started off really about trying to understand you and how you feel when you do something. What does that do to that muscle? What does that do to you when you do that? Does that feel different? What is the right process? And again, it's all that stuff for me where you go, I no longer accept the surface level. I do some research and dig and dig and dig and dig to a point where every morning now, 30 minutes learning I do. 30 minutes. I do some research upon what I'm doing now. So I've really sort of embraced the learning aspect of what I am now with the physical aspect that I've always been.
Okay.
Blending those two together. And what I'm doing, I'm putting, as I've been doing this for 5 years now, Philip, I've been building notes around my own methodology, around what I've done, what my thoughts were at the time when I did something, changed something, tweaked something, and what would that be useful for? And I've started to think, right, and I didn't know why we're doing it at first. Now I know. I'm going to write a book. I have no idea how to write a book, but I'm going to write a book. And I've stolen an idea that Bruce Lee did.
Yeah.
He wrote himself a letter that said, I am going to do this. And if you can research it and find out about it, I wrote myself one of these letters because this is a promise to myself that I'm going to do.
Mm.
And for all people who know, if you want to set a goal for yourself, say it in writing.
Mm.
Say it out loud to somebody. Because
You're
it
going to
will
go
then...
public with this, Simon. This is going to go out to thousands of people. So you're going to get
Right. So what I would love, right, and here's my big, big dream, and I'm going to quote this, if you don't mind. Steve Jobs said, the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones that do.
Yeah.
Guess what? I'm just your average person, but I believe I found something that's special, and I plan on taking that to the world. I've read stuff around what the World Health Organization's put, and they've said that the biggest problem we have in today's society is musculoskeletal disorder. I believe I've got a program that can work efficiently, effectively, and I can write a book that can help people gain muscular order. and it fits in with the vision of lots of places like the gym group, for instance. They believe they want to take exercise into the home. They want to make it available to everybody. Well, I've got a program that could do that.
Yeah.
Now, somehow I'm going to make it happen. And I might not. But in some years, I'm going to pass my research on to my children, and they're going to go and they're going to try and do it because I absolutely believe in this.
Right.
And if we want to do something, believe it.
Believe in it. I think it's a great story about, it's a great journey you've been on, isn't it? And relatively late in life, and I think it's the story that will give great encouragement to, for anyone. It's never too late to learn, is it? It's never too late.
Sure.
And it's fantastic that you have applied yourself. And I think we've got to be quite thankful for the UK educational system, because you wouldn't be able to do this if you lived in Germany or France. You wouldn't have been able to have got onto a master's program without an undergraduate degree. But the UK, started back in the 1960s with the Institute of Work-Based Learning, has sort of pioneered this belief that it's possible to learn academically in the workplace as well as at university. But what your story has demonstrated is just the reason why this approach is so valid. That if you could get this belief that everyone can do stuff, provided you teach them how to think and how to critically reflect, and you open up those germ of an idea, and look where it's taken you. I mean, it's incredible. I think it's a very inspiring story, Simon. So,
And
yeah,
it's not over yet. It's not over.
yeah,
I honestly feel like there's loads of paths to go. I love it.
yeah,
I'm doing a coaching course at the minute.
yeah,
So the thirst for knowledge. It's
yeah,
unquenchable once you open up your brain to
yeah,
thinking different.
yeah,
Wow. I mean, I found it just incredible. Like I
yeah,
said, life's about making the most of it.
yeah.
So I implore anybody out there, don't doubt
Yeah.
yourself. Just
Just do it. And is this? I mean, we're going to ask you as we sort of come towards the end of the podcast interview, if there are any, what are the key takeaways? Are there, the key messages that you would like to leave our listeners with as a reflection of the amazing journey that you've been on? And I know that you've spoken about this as we've been going through, but what would be the three key takeaways?
Three key takeaways. I think probably believe in yourself.
Okay.
Emotional intelligence, really understand you, what you want, and what. Don't settle.
Yeah.
Don't settle.
Yeah.
You are more than capable. We are more than capable of being more than what we are. So
Yeah.
my that's my first point. Really
Okay.
believe in yourself.
Because we have, it's the reason why we start off on the master's program, with that very first module is thinking innovatively about sales leadership. And it's an exploration of the sort of core values and beliefs. And we believe, exactly as you've just said, that you can't transform unless you really connect at a deep level. And what you've done is you've taken the emotional intelligence framework and you've used that to examine yourself. That's great. That's really good. So that's one takeaway: believe in yourself.
Yeah. Secondly, learn to reflect,
Yeah.
and in that, truly be critical about what you've done and why you did it.
Yeah.
Because only through that critical reflection will you improve, will you get better. And my second point would be aim every day to be 1% better. So I do it I make sure it happens.
Yeah.
I get up. The very first thing I do at 5 o'clock in the morning is do 30 minutes learning. I don't wait until later on in the day. I don't give myself a position to excuse. Be 1% better every day.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the second thing.
And again, that's it. For those that are doing the masters, this idea of critical reflection is part of the standard lexicon, if you like, of the program. But for people who haven't been through the masters, and you think, well, we think all the time. We think. Well, of course we think, because that's what we do. But critical reflection is taking that level of thinking to another. It's taking it to another level. It's like thinking on steroids, perhaps. I think throughout this podcast, you've demonstrated how you have begun to critically reflect. So that's great. Arguably, it's one of the most important things that we teach on the program. I think it's the ability to inspire people like you, to think differently, to explore different ideas, and to innovate as a consequence of it. Just love that process.
Yeah, so that goes back to that point, Philip, that the 95% of your thoughts are already pre-programmed. So although we think all the time, we're thinking the same 95% thoughts. Stop, pause, think, change.
Yeah. Okay, that's number 2, critical reflection. Do you have a third?
I do. Learn to listen.
Okay.
So what I've found this through the coaching course, really, really, really understood it a bit better, is that lots of us listen to download listen. So either to agree with what they're saying or confirm what we believe.
Yeah.
We're not actually truly listening to what that person is saying, because the minute they say something, sometimes you get people go, there's 5 people in a room and all 5 of them hear a different story.
Yeah.
Similar frame, but all different. No, I didn't get that. I got this. I got no. I got. That's that part of your brain that you're not listening. Stop all thought. So that's about that mindfulness of, you don't need to have an opinion at this point. Just listen.
Yeah. Okay.
Not an easy thing.
No, it's not. It really isn't. Okay. Well, that's amazing, Simon. Well, thank you so much for taking part in the podcast. I'm looking forward to the book, and you should consider the Finding Your Written Voice program that we may have spoken to you about. It's something with one of the lecturers at Middlesex. They've run this with us, and this is leading people on to write books. We've already got Grant Van Ulbrich, who has written his book, published and out on personal management. But we have this year another book coming out, written by 4 people who've been through the master's program around sales leadership. So we're beginning now to see people inspired to write, like yourself. But I think it's an amazing story, and good luck with the book, and with taking your concepts of exercise and stretching, into a new level. So thank you, Simon, for joining us.
And I'd like to thank you for creating the whole sales professional leadership qualification.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't one.
There wasn't one.
And you got together with the business. So if anybody's out there with an industry and you don't have a profession about it, and you don't have a qualification about it, go out there and create one. Work with Philip and get one.
Okay. Thank you, Simon.